Ladies and gentlemen, our next speaker is a real powerhouse behind Europe's clean energy innovation. Elena Bou co-founded Energy, the EU-backed impact investor, which has helped scale nearly 500 startups to support the energy transition. Elena, welcome to you. The stage is yours. Please join me in welcoming Elena.
So, ladies and gentlemen, it's a great pleasure to be here. I mean, many familiar faces. Indeed, we started with the first TBB, I think that it was 13 years ago, and we were just in a hotel, 20 startups. So, I mean, looking at this, we have seen that we have really evolved, we have grown. So the theme of this TBB, we are going to be talking about electrification. And it is interesting because 2 weeks ago, I was in Paris in the International Energy Agency, and his executive director, Mr. Birol, was saying, hey, we have moved from an age of coal to the age of oil, and now it is the age of electrification. And humanity is graduating from burning fossil fuels to really harnessing manufactured technology. From hunting scarce fossils to farming inexhaustible renewables. From just consuming Earth resources to borrowing them. And at the core of this change is the electron. How we use the electron, how we generate the electrons, how we connect those electrons. It is really a transformation. So how we generate, at the core of it, are the renewable energy. I mean, just a data, 50% of electricity in Europe is coming from renewable energies. How we use this data that Diego was saying. Today, we are having this electricity, about 3,000 terawatt-hours. It's going to grow 9,000 terawatt-hours. And that has to do not only with new demands like data centers, but also with the electrification of the mobility, with the EVs, with the industry. And also, the connection, how we connect supply and demand. And it is something very related with the grid tech, with the digitalization, and especially with the batteries. And if you have read the Financial Times last 2 weeks ago, talking about how BESS is now to grow the capacity big time, 67% only this year. So this is the great topic today. So what is driving this change? And we can say, hey, and we are convinced of it. Climate change is part of the drivers. But just leaving ideologies and this aside, there are also 3 drivers that are bringing this age of electricity. And the first one is efficiency. I mean, 2/3 of the energy is lost in a fossil energy system. And this is lost in terms of production, it is lost because of the transportation, and it is lost because of the use. And this represents $4.6 trillion. So each of you are paying $600 every year because of these losses. The electrotech is much more efficient, 3 times more. The second driver has to do with economics. At the end, the electrotech is based on technology. Technology is based on innovation, and the innovation is based on the learning curves. This is that with these learnings, the costs are falling. And if the cost falls, the adoption increases. So we need to scale. We need much more volume. And this will decrease the cost again. It is a virtuous cycle. This is something that it is not happening with the fossils. And the final driver has to do with geopolitics. Now, if we are talking about clean tech, we are talking about energy security. And 3/4 of all the countries in the world are dependent on fossil imports. But the interesting thing is that 92% of those have the capability of using renewables to multiply by 10 the needs of energy that they have. So it's massive. So this is the first message. The second message is that the time is now. We have this kind of urgency. And also the time is now because the technology today is here. For instance, just an example, a research done by Oxford mentions that today, with the technology that we have today, we could electrify 73% of all the industries with the technology that we have today. But at the same time, even if globally we are going in a very good direction, it's going to be a hard change locally. And just as an example, China is the first electro-state. And this is very good. They are deploying, and not only that, but they are manufacturing. They are creating these clean tech technologies. But at the same time, this concentration of value chains in a very concentrated area is provoking vulnerabilities. And that's just an example. 3 weeks ago, China announced that it was going to restrict lithium battery exports. Batteries that were coming to Europe, to our OEMs. So this is something that we have to take into account. So Europe, what are we doing? Are we going to do this wait and see, typical? No. Europe is taking a very clear position. Growth in Europe means that our climate ambition and industrial competitiveness goes hand in hand. Only fostering this clean manufacturing is at the core of meeting Europe's 2030, 2040, 2050 climate goals. And this means a long-term commitment. And we are talking about investments. And investors need this kind of long-term commitment in order to be able to deploy today large amounts of capital. So Europe is not only focused on that growth, but it is also focusing on a resilience economy. And that is why, for instance, they have launched of this initiative like the Net Zero Industrial Lab or the Industrialized Accelerator Act, and Made in Europe. And Made in Europe is an incentive for the European companies to resort to other companies that are in Europe in order to make transactions, in order to do contracts, in order to have these off-taker agreements. And this is something that it is not about closing the market. It's just giving the opportunity to the European companies to scale. And finally, being pragmatic, we want all this. Europe cannot go alone. Decoupling from China is impossible. I mean, our GDP in Europe accounts for 50%. Okay, 31 China, 26 US. So they need to be part of the equation. And we need to find new ways to collaborate, but a la European style. And that is something that it is important because it is good that this industrial expertise is coming to Europe, but we want this value to be staying here in terms of jobs, in terms of GDP, in terms of growth. So this is the second message. Yes, the time is now, but the change is going to be hard. It's going to affect countries, the geopolitics, but it is also going to affect companies. And that would be my third and last message. So let's walk the talk. How is going to affect also us? Are we going to change? So just let me come back 15 years ago when we founded InnoEnergy. And at that moment, the scenario, the European, was completely different. I mean, that was the moment of the Lisbon Treaty. And we were talking about the knowledge society. And we were talking that Europe had a problem. Innovation, we were very good at creating knowledge, but we were not so good at innovating. By the way, something that is still the challenge still remains. Okay? And then the European Commission, led by Mr. Barroso, said, OK, I want something like MIT here in Europe. Fantastic. The only problem is that the knowledge in Europe is distributed all around the place. It's fragmented. So that was the challenge that we had at that time. So it was how to foster innovation in this field. And I have to say, because we have been, and InnoEnergy has been part of studies now in the business schools, is that there are two key innovations that we put in place at that moment. The first one was to focus on sustainable energy, on accelerating the energy transition. And this is something, if you remember, that the energy transition was not popular till the year 2015 with the Paris Agreement. So part of the founders, the idea was, super visionary about what was the idea of sustainable energy and how to foster it. And the second innovation was about the governance model, the instrument, how we were going to do all this, how we were going to push this innovation effectively. And that is where, after 2 years of research, we determined that InnoEnergy was going to be the first innovation ecosystem managed by a company. An innovation ecosystem that would have different ingredients: academia, research centers, industries, what it was called at that moment the knowledge triangle. And at the same time, we were going to connect the dots. And that is why, at the same time, InnoEnergy was working in France, in Germany, in Benelux, many different regions connecting the dots. Have we succeeded in this attempt? I remember that at the very first beginning, when they were asking this question, what is success for you? We said, we will succeed the moment that we have to close InnoEnergy. And everybody was like, what? Say, yes, because if we close InnoEnergy, that means that our mission, accelerating the energy transition, has already happened. I have to say that we are still open, okay? But, as Diego has said, we are in a mission, and we are delivering. For the last 15 years, we have really fostering innovation. We have been supporting 540 companies. Some of them, they have become a unicorn, 4 of them. But all these companies, the interesting aspect is that they have been a benchmark in terms of funding, capital, in terms of survival. I mean, we have really made a breakthrough in the sense of the results. The International Energy Agency chose InnoEnergy as a benchmark in the world, and we were the so-called the accelerator of clean tech in Europe. PitchBook has considered us the most active investor for the last 4 years. But the most important aspect is that these companies, they can contribute in the year 2030 to a reduction of 2.3 gigatons. And in this journey, something that we learned, it is like when we are pushing innovation, it's not just about one company. It is about creating the conditions for that market. And that is why, in the year 2017, we started pushing the concept of the strategic value chains. And that is why the European Commission gave us the mandate to the EVA, to the European Battery Alliance, to push that in Europe. PV came afterwards. And then we also learned that sometimes the market has failures. And sometimes an opportunity is not grasped neither by the incumbent, neither by the newcomer. And that is when InnoEnergy, we started building our companies. Companies like Verkor, like Gravity, like Fertigy, Holosolis, Soundwave. And that was to feel exactly that market failure and to say, hey, we are going to the first ones in order to push and to fill that gap. So others also will come. And these are markets that we are talking about more than 600 billion per year and 4 million jobs to be created. Well, this has been part of our journey. And the important thing is that this would not have been happening without all of you, without the ecosystem that it is a trusted ecosystem that we have created and managed. These are a lot of numbers, but behind this number, I mean, our companies, for instance, they have been able to raise 34 billion. This would have been impossible without the support of our 250 members of our VC community, of our public investors, local and from the European Commission. We have 100 partners in terms of corporates. These have been the ones that they have led for the last 2 years, 6,000 leads and contracts of 800 million. Talent is a key theme for the companies. And in the last year, we have fulfilled 160 positions for our portfolio companies. And that would have been impossible to do it without our universities that are working together in order to have 240 graduates outside in the world. So at the end, we are delivering because this ecosystem is here. And that is the reason of the TBB. For the ones that it is the first time, this is the reason of the TBB. The ecosystem making it happen. So take opportunity of these 2,000, 3,000 pre-agreed meetings, because that is where the action is going to happen. And in the meantime, I mean, we have changed our logo because we want to send a message. Same mission, higher ambitions. That is the Vision 2030. We want to have more impact, and we are going to stay with the innovation. But the important thing now is to push. We know that this innovation is not only about novelty, it's not only about adoption, but it is about impact. And the impact has to go from 1 to N to really multiply. And that is the focus that we have in the next year. And for that, as they all have said, we are going to be prepared. We have started being prepared because we are going to build on what we have today, on the engine that we have built, and complement that with new financial instruments, with this asset management. Why? Because we want really to fill the gap, to fill the pain of these company builders, of these champions that they want to scale. We are going to create a much powerful toolbox for this industrialization. And finally, we need more skills and more expertise. And this is going to come from new strategic partnerships and making this ecosystem much more stronger. And in all this journey, it's going to be something that it has been accompanying us from all this time. Our purpose, why we are doing this. For the planet, for the people, for profits, and for real. Thank you very much.